Hello and welcome to the Calm Blue Podcast post-match reaction, sponsored by NordVPN. If you want to give the gift of internet security this Christmas, you can find a cracking link in the description down below. Not a happy, laughing matter this evening, though, Rob. Aston Villa lose away at St James's again for what feels like the millionth time in a row. I'm your host, Dan Rolinson, joined by Rob Warner this Boxing Day. Rob, you had a nice day?
Yeah, it's been awesome. As Boxing Days always are as a Villa fan. Is that four in a row now we've lost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something like that. So, yeah, I would rather have been drinking sherry and eating cheese than watching that today. But unfortunately, because I'd said that I'd come on here, then I had to stay with it until the bitter end.
Well, maybe this would have been a better podcast if you had been drinking sherry and eating cheese all afternoon.
Yeah.
I have got a beer, to be fair. I cracked open one.
The Claret and Blue Cheese podcast could have been pretty good, I reckon.
Honestly, I'd have loved that. That'd be so good. Like a kind of bit of chat about Villa, bit of chat about Rockford and Stilton.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice
Take it a bit more highbrow for Christmas.
Yeah, nice. Maybe that'll be the Christmas special next year instead. Well, actually, we can do that anytime we want, can't we? You might be able to tell viewers who are here live or those listening that we're trying to delay things a little bit. We don't really want to be talking about this afternoon's football, to be perfectly honest. This is it's my job. You're here to help me out, and thank you for that. But this is what we do. We try and cover every game as best we can. A little bit later than usual for an away day. We normally aim to go live just after full time, but for the comments saying like, "Come on, where are you?" I've got kids trying to fight children to bed on Boxing Day has been why I've opened a beer. So here we are. Calm down a little bit, but still kind of disappointed. I think it might have been you and I actually who were on a few weeks ago said like we're not angry, we're disappointed, and it kind of feels a little bit similar to me. To you?
Yeah, definitely. I haven't come away from it feeling angry. I think I went into it expecting that we would get turned over, which isn't a great feeling as a Villa fan, and not one that I take lightly. The reason being that against teams like Newcastle that press high up the field and get stuck in and are more inclined to be physical, then history would suggest that we don't perform well against them. It's not just Newcastle. There's a few other teams in the league that tend to rough us up and get a result out of us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wasn't massively surprised today, but I was disappointed with the way it played out for sure.
Yeah, me and my dad watched the game together on Amazon, which is good coverage. To be fair, Amazon. I've been impressed with their stuff this year. We kind of joke like we should just take the 3-0 defeat every year and just write the game off and say it's a long way, lads. You know, I don't think we just won't come. We'll lose anyway. Take the 3-0 victory and we'll stay at home and eat cheese and drink sherry. Yeah, it's just so frustrating, isn't it? The record at St James's, like, that is the title for tonight's episode. Something like, the curse continues. I think the last time we won there was the 2005, I want to say, the Bowyer and Dyer fighting each other.
So they did say on the telly earlier, 2004 or 5, 20 years since we've won it there.
Before that, I think it was something like 96, maybe. So something like 22 or 23 fixtures that we've played there, and since we've won, I think, which is incredible, really, considering that Newcastle have been pretty crap during those years as well. With the Mike Ashley years, like you think we'd have got a win somewhere. So it's such a terrible record. Is there anything in that, do you think? This is absolutely a side point away from today's match itself, but like, why would one club have such a terrible record at one specific stadium? Is it because it's far away?
No idea. Yeah, I mean, nobody enjoys a trip up to Scotland at the best of times, so I can only assume that that's got a role to play in it. But no, I think it's just one of those things through each one of those periods where we've had different managers and gone up there and not performed. It's always been for different reasons. Like you say, when they were in the doldrums, the majority of the time we were even worse, really.
Oh, yeah, true.
So it's, I think it's just unfortunate. Right now, it feels to me like it's the way that they set up compared to the way that we set up that makes all the difference. And we never seem to change anything to combat it, whether it's at Villa Park or at their place.
Yeah.
Apart from probably the time that we did manage to give them a good C-2 down at Villa Park when I think Ramsey had a really good game in that one.
The 3-0
opener, yeah.
It's such a strange fixture, and it is a weird feeling going into the game thinking, I mean, we didn't do a preview, but I'd have said, I think I'd have probably gone for a draw in like the hope of I'd absolutely take a draw, but I always felt like we'd lose, which is, as you said at the start, a really crap feeling to have in this specific fixture. Boxing Day just feels like that's a recipe for Villa absolutely losing the game. But to go behind in 1 minute 20 or something, we'd never help ourselves, do we? Like, it is a good finish, but to go behind so early on, it's just like as if this wasn't a difficult task enough. You 1-0 down after 80 seconds or something, and not that the game is over because there's still 90 odd minutes to play, but it felt like, oh, okay, well, there's the inevitable goal we knew was coming. I don't think we'll get back into this. Like, we'll do very, very well to even get a point now.
Yeah, but so early, it's difficult. You know, a lot's made of the atmosphere at St James's Park. It certainly didn't come through on the telly today too much. I think the early goal gets people excited, whatever stadium it's at. It was interesting. I can't remember too much about the second goal. I must have saved over that already. But the first and third goals came almost immediately after giving the ball away. So with the first goal, it was really Kamara probably trying to be a bit too clever in the centre of the field and flip it over his marker's head. And then there's just a massive gap between, because Onana was up fairly level with him and they're protecting the defence, and it just felt like there was a massive gap between the defensive midfielders and the defence for them to play the ball into. Yeah. And Anthony Gordon, you know, as much as he looks like a middle-aged woman from Coronation Street, he's a good footballer, and he's the type of footballer that we don't have. Even when Bailey's been on form, I think Gordon is good with both feet, and he can cross it and he can shoot. And you give him that much space on the edge of the box, and at the very least, he's going to test the goalkeeper 9 times out of 10. And as it goes, he's put it top bins. I think Cash came in for a little bit of stick, certainly online and during the game. I think that in the analysis they talked about he didn't get close enough to Gordon, but he was overrun a little bit with the fullback going past him, and he was caught in two minds. Yeah, but I don't know. I do wonder if going to the man with the ball on the edge of the box is probably the more sensible option than worrying about the fullback, because that's another phase of play and the central defenders can get back to cover that. And he seemed to end up doing neither. And then the ball's in the net. But I thought we actually composed ourselves quite well afterwards. It was more... I
actually thought, I mean, we'll get to the red card in a sec, but I thought after the goal, which was obviously like the first 80 seconds and up until the red card, not that we were like amazing, but we were comfortably in the game still. I thought we were probably, you know, fairly matched to Newcastle, and probably I did think, as much as I said then, like, oh, I've write the game off here. I did think the way we were playing up until the red card, maybe we do get something here. And we didn't create loads of chances, but I felt like, okay, we've kind of dealt with the setback and we've kind of composed ourselves enough, and we've got through the next 20 minutes or whatever it was with relative comfort. And I felt okay about the way the game was going. A couple of comments I want to bring in. Sour Rat, I think is the pronunciation. Bearing in mind the predicted physicality of Newcastle, why on earth wasn't Tyrone Mings playing? That did again feel a bit like a slam dunk, didn't it? Mings plays against a more physical team.
Yeah, it did. It was a strange one. I can understand that Pau Torres had a good game against City, so I get that. It's more really the midfield feels disappointing again in terms of lacking physicality. And although Kamara and Onana are big lads, I felt like we got overrun, and they were saying before the game, weren't they, the analysts, that this game will be won and lost in midfield, as so many games are. But I think too much was made of the idea that Tonali's going to sit in front of the defence and the other two will run in front of him. They all three seem to run together and hunt in a pack. And because their fullbacks get forward, then it pegs our kind of wide. They're not really wingers, are they? They're wide midfielders, so it pegs them back a bit. Yeah. And really, they felt quite comfortable leaving Duran against Cher and Dan Burn in terms of when they were looking to push forward. And so as soon as we didn't have a centre forward anymore, that was it. They could just flood the midfield as much as they wanted. But that midfield three they've got, they're all a goal threat. They can all get stuck in. They can all pass a ball. They really suit their style of play and the way that they attack and defend as as a unit of three means that we were overrun when we were trying to defend our own box because we'd only got two back there. And then also they matched us man for man when we were trying to attack because we'd got one forward and three attacking midfielders. So it did feel we were almost set up in a basketball-y type style, whereas they were really compressing the game when we'd got the ball.
Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from Newcastle, by the way. And I also don't want to blame the referee or the Duran red card for us losing the game, because we have to be better defensively in those situations anyway. Going forward, like, we didn't really create anything. I can't think of many chances that were like, oh, we should have done better with that, or we could have scored this. Newcastle are a good side. That starting 11, I think, is pretty strong. I think the defence is a bit ropey and absolutely can be got at. You look at that midfield three, and then you already mentioned Gordon. Isak is one of the best centre forwards in the league as well. They're very dangerous, and if you don't deal with them, they do what they've done today, and that is like, that can happen. So I'm not going to be too like, oh no, we've lost a game to a team that were below us, like panic stations. A lot of teams can lose at St James's and it not kind of derail the season. The red card does affect it, and the referee does affect it. I just don't want that to be the reason why we've lost. One comment I wanted to reference, King 81, I see all the time, so I'm not kind of digging you out here, mate, but just going to go for your comment. Us as fans have so many excuses for our form. We never win there. It's an early kickoff. It's a late kickoff. It's on telly. It's after Europe. No European game. Injuries. Too many changes. Not enough changes, etc. I don't want it to be like, I don't think we're making excuses for the team. Hopefully that's not the way it comes across. I'm trying to find reasons maybe for why certain games go the way they do, and sometimes maybe there isn't really a reason, and a couple of little things can go wrong, and that's enough to set you off for the game. Conceding in the first 80 seconds is going to disrupt everything you prepared for. Like, that doesn't help. But I kind of get the point. We always try and find something. Is that excuses, Rob, do you think? Or are we just trying to find a reason when maybe there isn't reason, and we're just trying to kind of cope with ourselves?
No, I would say it's, given that we're not fully trained members of Unai Emery's backroom staff, then it's probably our attempt at some sort of analysis, isn't it? So,
analysis.
You've got to look at what happened, what potentially went wrong. You know, I think it's easy to say as fans we're always making excuses for our form. Again, look at where we are in the table. You look at the points total rather than just the place, and everything's still completely up for grabs. Yeah. Let's not forget, we went down there and got slapped properly last season. Whereas today, you're right, the Duran red card didn't change the game or didn't influence the game to the extent that that's why we lost. It would have been totally different if he'd stayed on the field, but it would certainly have made a difference because we were starting to apply pressure. Yeah, and then they just had a free run of it because Rodgers went to centre forward, which left us exposed down the left.
The way the commentators were talking about it in the game, it was like there was one kind of attacking phase from Newcastle, and they said something like, "Oh, you can tell the man advantage for Newcastle is paying off or something." And I was kind of thinking, well, yeah, but Duran would be nowhere near this defensively. He'd be like stood on the halfway line. Maybe that affects a Newcastle player going forward or whatever. But it felt a little bit like, if we'd lost a centre half or a midfielder and you're moving the team around to combat that, that's a bit different. Losing your striker who doesn't really defend anyway, although he does a little bit, was not the reason why we conceded the goals that we did, is the point. Obviously, it affected the game. Yeah. Let's talk about that red card. It's obviously the hot topic. Just quickly, before we get into our quote-unquote analysis, was it a red?
Not for me, Clive. It's no, I don't think it was. I can see why it was given in the moment, and I think if it was the other way around, I would have been calling for a red card. Also, I probably wouldn't have had many complaints if it wasn't a red card. The thing for me is, and there's plenty of photos knocking around on the internet that show it looking like a really dreadful intentional challenge. I think the key for me is to just watch his left foot. And I know there's the preamble to that of where Cher supposedly is trying to lash out and kick Duran as well, as they're both falling. But I think if Duran doesn't straighten his leg out, I think he's in real danger of getting a knee injury. And I also think that if Duran intentionally wanted to hurt Fabian Cher there, Fabian Schär would have been going off injured because Duran was in the perfect position to really hurt him. And, yes, his foot landed on him, but too much of the analysis was about what his right leg was doing without looking at his overall body shape. And, as somebody, I'll try and provide a little bit of credence for what I'm saying as somebody who's had to create products for elite athletes for a number of years. This is the type of thing that you're always looking for within the game and across many sports is what's the body shape? How could they have avoided that? What could we have done here? And with there, I just don't see any option for him but to have tried to straighten his leg out, or one way or another, his two legs would have been bent up, and therefore one knee at least is going to be at risk.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where I don't know what he's supposed to do. I don't know what he's supposed to do with his body to avoid doing what he did.
Yeah.
There's a couple of comments coming through. Some say that it was intentional, some saying it wasn't a red whatsoever. It's one of those ones that will polarize people. Some will just go, yes, it's a red. Some will say absolutely not, which is kind of the point, I suppose. You can see it either way. I also don't think it was. There's obviously talk about Villa appealing it, and if they do, I think they probably will get it overturned.
Emery said that he plans to appeal it, and Eddie Howe apparently said after the game that although he hadn't seen it back, he thought it was harsh at first viewing. So, I mean,
two comments here back to back. Duran has not intentionally tried to hurt him. He just wanted to put a slight knock on him, thinking it was a 3-1 with them both coming together, which is possibly true. Maybe thinks I can leave a bit on him here to kind of wind him up or something, and I'll get away with it, potentially. Then the following comment, he could easily have stepped to the side of him but put his foot onto him. It's a deliberate choice. I don't think that is true, and obviously we will not know. I don't think Duran, his age is never going to say.
Just watch it. I
don't think that was in. I don't think there's any malicious intent from Duran to go out to hurt Schär in that instance. Maybe what the previous comment said, like I can leave a little on it. I can kind of leave a trailing leg and give him a bit of a nudge, kind of go 1-0 to me, and we'll play on. But potentially. But I don't think there's any thought in it whatsoever. The commentary was more obsessed about he wanted to take a free kick 5 minutes ago and didn't get it, so he must be frustrated and he's lashing out. All right, let's not over analyze it in that way. But I don't think it was a red. But I think I fell foul to what potentially the refereeing team felt at the time. In real time, I thought, Duran, what an idiot! He's gone in for, you know what I mean? It's Duran, that's who he is, he's a hothead, all that kind of stuff. And then when I kind of reflected on it a little bit, I thought, I think that's very harsh, actually. And I wonder if that is given because it's John Duran and he has this reputation of being a bit of a loose cannon, being a bit of a chaos creator, getting a yellow card here and there for silly things. I don't know whether Anthony Taylor has ever booked Duran for something and he's got that in the back of his mind subconsciously of I know what this guy's like, possibly. I think if that's Ollie Watkins, I don't think it's given. I think if it's Isak on Torres, I don't think it's given. I think there's a little bit of this here that's the player. And
Emery said so as well. Emery said so after the game. He was asked directly, do you think Duran's got a little bit of a reputation and that's played a role? And he was clearly said yes. And it's been interesting. Yeah, and it's been interesting. Emery's not really want to criticise referees and VAR. But certainly,
it's the last couple of weeks, though, hasn't it? And to be fair, rightly so. We've been on, I think, on the back of a couple of stinkers.
Yeah,
I think in that one, Emery's absolutely right. The referee's got to take more time to make that decision, and then VAR maybe don't even have to get involved. I think once it's I've given it VAR, I've got to check it. I don't think VAR were ever going to overturn it because they'll see what the ref saw. Oh, it's violent conduct or there's malicious intent or whatever. But I think if the ref takes a bit more time, I actually think I've seen a clip back and I don't know whether I'm overanalyzing it too much the other way. I think the referee's given a throw-in before the Newcastle players have gone mad. So I don't think his initial thought was, is this a red card?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was the referee in general had a poor game. I think the early booking on Cash set the tone then, and he'd set his stall out. Then there was, and I'll remember the Villa incidents more clearly because I'm a Villa supporter. So I know we've got some Newcastle fans in the comments, and there was plenty the opposite direction. I just can't recall it at the moment. Yeah. But there was the one from the free kick where Cher was pulling Cash's shirt, and then they both went down, and the referee gave a foul against Cash. And then there was Joelinton, where yes, Rodgers made a meal of it, but there was an arm put in his face. We've seen them given as red cards. I don't think that was a sending off, but I think what was different, knowing that VAR will typically this season have said they'll generally support the ref's initial decision. In that incident, he gave a yellow card to Joelinton, and then VAR had a look at it and confirmed with him. Whereas with Duran, even though he was about 40 yards away, he got his red card out straight away, which then means that VAR have got to overturn that. Whereas the way we've seen matches refereed this season, I would expect a yellow card to come out and then perhaps VAR to tell him to go and have a look at it.
Yeah, that would make more sense, because I would then think there's a bit more thought process gone into this. People have reviewed it and decided actually it's worse than what the referee thought at the time. We're going to upgrade it. And if that was the case, not that I'd agree with it, but I'd understand the thought process a bit more. To just come flying out with a red card, to me, was a little bit of a reactionary reaction to Newcastle going, he's done this. Whereas I don't think he did. I don't think that was intentional. And obviously we'll never know. And if Duran does come out, he's not going to say, I was trying to kick him, I was trying to break his nose or anything. Obviously not. So it's one of those ones that we'll never know. If it's overturned, that will be interesting, because that shows that the refereeing group have gone against what happened on the day. Whether that will happen, it will be a show of what their kind of integrity is, I suppose. If it stands and it's a 3-game ban, then bad for Duran, good news for Ollie Watkins, I suppose, and ends that debate for
Louis Barry as well.
Potentially, and he comes back into the side. But it's so frustrating, because that shirt was Duran's to lose. He's been playing very well. He could have gone on to do something during this game, and it's his shirt now. And because of that, whether he meant it or not, this is football, isn't it? And now it's Ollie Watkins' shirt to impress with again.
Yeah, it's so it's easy to say football's decided by moments, but it really is. And with somebody like Duran, you don't have to be playing well to be in with a chance of scoring a goal, because we've seen it enough times now that he can produce a goal out of nowhere. So we were playing all right. We weren't playing as if we were getting beat. It was they scored a wonderful goal, and then it was really evenly matched until that moment. So whilst it's not an excuse, it's definitely a turning point in the game. And as I said earlier, it gave them the opportunity then to even more flood the midfield with their fullbacks, because they'd got less to worry about in the attacking part of the field.
What did you think of that Joelinton one on Rodgers, by the way? Did you say before? Because I was reading comments. I think that was a red card.
It was just daft on it. It wasn't a red card for me. It was refereed properly, where he's booked him and then let VAR give him some guidance. Whereas if he'd shown the straight red there, the chances are VAR would have supported that as well. But he
one of those ones, I guess, we'll never know.
Differently, and it's frustrating. And one of the other comments I've just seen there, I missed who it was from, was saying about why are we looking at the challenge in slow motion when football's not played in slow motion? And I think that's totally true. Look at it in slow motion to see if there's been contact, etc. But really, you've got to look at it at full speed, and you've got two big guys running really fast there. So don't tell me he could have stepped out of the way.
Yeah, I just don't know what he's supposed to do.
15 stone running at full speed. He's got his balance is completely off. It's nonsense. You potentially, looking at it in slow motion, you could have potentially booked both of them.
Yeah. There's a comment here saying, sort of game we just need to sweep under the carpet and move on. There will be much better days ahead. 1-0 down after 2 minutes at St James's is very difficult to come back from. And that is kind of how I feel about it. I went into this game thinking we'll probably lose, and we have. So weirdly, obviously you don't want to lose games. I'm not happy we've lost, but I'm not like irate and annoyed that we have, because I thought we were going to do something and we haven't. I've definitely felt like that this season in other games. But what happened today, even to the point of it being 3-0, I kind of felt like that could happen going into the game. Like we could be on a bit of a hide in here. Yeah, because Newcastle are a good side at home, and that can happen.
They are a good side. Yeah,
I'm not like too angry or frustrated about it, but it does put this kind of like weird pressure on ourselves, even if that's just from the fan base rather than the club itself, that we kind of have to beat Brighton now, I think, and probably Leicester. or you definitely can't lose either game. Whereas if you'd have won today, maybe you can get away with dropping a point here and there. Whereas now you're going, well, Brighton on Monday, I feel like we have to win because of where Brighton are. Leicester are down at the bottom, so you'd be expecting to beat them. So there's this kind of weird pressure on us now to get 6 points just to kind of keep track of where we are with the rest of the sides. Like, yes, Tottenham have lost and Man United have lost and Chelsea have lost and whatever. But at some point, Villa have got to start looking after themselves. And with games like today, they don't do that. And, in parts of that, we didn't play well defensively, not very good, passing it straight out to Newcastle on multiple occasions and being punished. Like, you do that against any side, you're going to concede goals and lose. So we now have to go to Brighton and Leicester or go to Villa Park and they come to us and probably win both games, which is a pressure that Villa could do without, to be honest.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. The big thing for me today that was most disappointing, because we're not going to win every game. Nobody wins every game. But it felt like a little bit of a fall back into bad habits where, not that we were holding on to the ball for too long, we just didn't seem to be passing the ball with enough pace. It seemed to be taking too long. And when you're playing against a team with a high press, and we talked about it after the Tottenham game, was it? There was some game that we covered together, and just the lack of pace up front presents an issue because the outball's a bit more difficult. And then couple that with literally not fizzing the ball around quickly enough. The passes were largely well timed. There was quite a few sloppy ones where there was McGinn's one across the penalty area, and we've seen Torres do that as well against Leipzig. There's been a few instances today where it's just been really poor passes, but generally the ball just wasn't moving quick enough. When you've got quick players in the opposition that will close you down, then the age-old phrase "let the ball do the work" is absolutely true. You've got to beat the players by moving the ball quickly, and too many of our passes just felt under hit.
Yeah. Just talk to me about the substitutions very quickly to end. We often talk about Emery's in-game management and whether it's good or bad in different games. Obviously, Tielemans comes off at half-time, which was a little bit surprising. And then the triple sub of Kamara, Rodgers and Cash. Cash also felt surprising. I know he was on a yellow, but if it was like, okay, we think this game's gone, we're going to rest players. Well, Cash can't play Monday anyway, so that feels a little bit strange. And then McGinn for Buendia was the final change with 10 minutes to go. Were they the right subs, do you think? Were we better after those substitutions?
It looked to me like he was perhaps trying things out just to see what people are capable of, knowing the volume of games we've still got to come in the second half of the season. I think if it had been 1-1 at that point, or we'd only been a goal behind, it might have been a different approach. I thought Barkley, for the most part, played well. When he came on, he was moving some long passes around and looked generally quite comfortable on the ball. There was one instance that I can't fully recall where he did seem to get caught with it. But generally, I thought he did okay. I don't think anybody that came on did anything particularly wrong. Buendia didn't make an impact again. He seems well off the pace every time he comes on at the moment, which is a real shame because the back end of the season before his injury, he'd looked really good. He was scoring headers from corners and stuff. That's the level he was playing at. And he just looks a shadow of that. But I'd like to think it's just that he's getting back up to speed. I agree with what you'd said earlier. I don't know perhaps why Mings wasn't playing. Why not have a look at a back five, and see what we could do to counter their attack in front three. The other substitution that, although you called it at half time, I was a little bit, if I was the gaffer, I wouldn't have made it, was bringing Watkins on for Rodgers, because Rodgers is so powerful and can run with the ball. I felt that was really important, and I would have been inclined to have perhaps played with, as much as we'd started with a 4-2-3-1, just play a 4-2-3 for the time being. We were only a goal down, and see what we can do if we can build a bit of pressure and people start getting jittery. They're only still 1-0 up with 15 minutes to go or whatever, and then that's the opportunity to make the change. So for me, that felt not quite right, and I don't know if I could really tell you what the shape was in the second half.
Yeah. I was thinking Watkins will come on, and if Watkins is playing to the standard that we know he can, he'll be an out ball in behind, and he'll peg Newcastle's defence back a little bit, and maybe we can go a bit longer and put it into space. Whereas Rodgers is going to want it into feet and then turn, and he's probably on the halfway line, and who's ahead of him? Well, nobody. And that was what we saw too often. It's kind of Rodgers gets the ball and he's going to run down a blind alley because there's no one there now. Whereas with Watkins, I felt like he would be the out ball, and he wasn't. Watkins didn't play well, and nobody played particularly well. I mean, you'll be able to tell we've not done the man of the match for obvious reasons. Who would it be? Nobody. There's a comment saying, how many games do European contenders lose in a given season? We've lost a third of our games so far, which surely puts us mid-table at best. Having a quick scan through the Premier League table while Rob was talking over the last few years, teams that finished 4th and 5th, so Champions League places if the coefficient goes our way, between 9 and 12 as an average is probably how many games you can lose. So in a poor season for finishing in the top 5, if you lose 12, Villa are already halfway there, which, we're at the halfway point of the season pretty much. So Villa can lose the same amount of games in the second half and still do enough to finish 5th. But obviously, the more games you lose, the harder the task is. So it's around 9 or 10 probably as an average. So Villa can't afford to lose many more games. And I thought that Villa are going to go for the 4 or 5 months in 2025, only losing another 4 games in the league feels pretty unlikely to me. So we're going to have to start pulling out some wins from somewhere if we are going to finish in the top 5, which I do still think is doable. But I think obviously the longer the season goes on, where Villa aren't quite there, you'll kind of temper your expectations a little bit and think, oh, how many games to finish 6th then? How many defeats then? It's a little bit more.
I think the one thing in our favour probably is that we don't tend to draw many games. We tend to either win or lose. So you can temper that number of defeats just based on, it's really how many games you need to win to qualify is more how I'd look at it. And I would think we're probably stacking up fairly well against that metric. We tend to, this is where you look the stats up and prove me completely wrong, but we tend to, I feel at least, win games or get beat. It's not very often there's a draw. We drew with Bournemouth, but
we drew 8 last season. We won 20. And obviously we finished 4th. Just scrolling through again, kind of 20 to 22 as a rough average of wins. Villa are on 8, so we probably need to win another 12 games.
Out of 20,
afford to lose 6. So that's what 18 games.
Yeah,
so win another 1. It is doable. Villa have got to put a run together.
Absolutely. I mean, the record under Emery
doable.
The record under Emery is 1 win in 2 games. And if you think that we've got 20 games to go,
10.
then we've got to win. We win 10 of those on average.
A few draws gets you into 60.
A couple more that we want to pull out the bag. So he only needs a decent run of form. And because everybody's beating everybody else, who knows what it will look like. We could end up with a record low total for Champions League qualification from the Premier League this season. Chelsea looked absolutely untouchable 2 or 3 weeks ago, and now they've lost a couple of games. Wolves look like they were going to sink without a trace. They've now not conceded a goal for 2 games and scored 5. So the league's absolutely all over the board, other than Liverpool. And from what I've seen in the comments, they're getting beat at the moment as well.
1-0 at the moment to Leicester. Comment here, so we're 8 points behind where we were at the midpoint last season, which isn't a massive amount, really, considering we were kind of, are we in a title challenge this time last year and could have been top at Christmas. Well, we didn't, how do I say this without sounding like an idiot? We didn't need to be that good, did we? Because we finished 4th and the end of 4th was the aim. We didn't need to be like title standard. We had to be 4th standard. So we were like better than we thought last year. So the fact we're behind where we were at this point last year probably puts us on par for where we were at the end of the season. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. I think I'd be more inclined to compare our form this season to the last 18 games of last season rather than the first 18 or 20, because as you say, we were slugging it out for top of the league, weren't we? So, and then we fell away, inverted commas, including some pretty heavy defeats at Villa Park and away from Villa Park.
Yeah, the back end of last season wasn't good, was it? but we still managed to do it. So you kind of feel like, and again, this is all like pie in the sky, if buts and maybes. We've not been amazing or very good in the first half of this season, so we can still go on to achieve our goals by doing the reverse of last season. We have to be better in the second half, which is absolutely doable, and why I'm not too like, oh, this is the end of the world, here we go, we're going to finish 10th. That may well happen, but I think we'll go through the gears at some point and find a bit of a rhythm, which we haven't got at the moment, but it's not impossible that does come at some point, even if we have to wait till the Champions League quarterfinals or whenever it is we go out of that competition and we've got 10 games left. Well, maybe we win 7 of 10 and that's enough to finish 5th. Like, that's perfectly feasible.
Yeah. No, there's still plenty to look forward to. Today will feel worse because we've conceded 3 and had a man sent off.
Yeah.
I think if we'd have got a point from today, and if my auntie, the rest of the saying. So, but if we'd got a point today, we'd be sitting here saying, "Well, yeah, we're looking all right actually. We're in a really good spot." And
we win the next 2 games, and we will feel like that.
Yeah. So, and that's it. We could have got a draw today and a draw against Brighton. Whereas if we lose today and beat Brighton, then that's actually more points on the board, even though it probably feels worse.
Yeah.
And I think too much is made of form, particularly this season, where other than Liverpool, there's not really anybody putting together a really consistent run of form. It's more win 1, lose a few, win 3, lose 2. Everyone seems to be in that sort of way of playing. And it'd be interesting. I don't reckon you've got the time to look the stats up right now. It'd be interesting to see how common that was in the season after a major tournament, either the Euros or the World Cup, whether the inverted commas bigger sides actually do have a more stuttering season the year after a major tournament.
Yeah.
Because for the players alone, just in Villa shirts, have played 54 games in 2024. And then you add in the amount of games that they will have played for their international teams, whether that's McGinn, whether that's Watkins, whoever else. Some of the players out there have probably played getting on for 70 games in 52 weeks, and they'll have never done anything like it before, and we haven't got the squad depth to be able to really rest and rotate. So it's important for us to look at where we are in our journey towards being a regular top-level team. I think if PSR was different, we'd have done the summer differently. We might have been having a better season than we are now. But based on the rules that are in place and where we're at in terms of our development as a club, I don't feel too bad. But yes, we do need to sort the defence out.
But so would some others. Newcastle, I think, would probably have been a mainstay in the Champions League after they qualified last year. Obviously, Chelsea can do what they want, but Tottenham, I think, if Daniel Levy opened the purse strings, would spend more money if they could. So, yes, PSR has hampered us, but it's hampered a few. Unless you're Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United, or Arsenal, you can't just spend what you want, and it's up to those clubs to find some kind of consistency in what they've got, whether that be with the results, whether they get hampered by injuries or not. Like, it's a difficult task to put together a top 4, top 5 contending team over the course of a season. It's hard to find that consistency. Villa haven't got it yet. Their defence is not good enough. They do not take chances as well as they should do when they present themselves. But that can all change. That can come, and that's my kind of takeaway this Christmas. That Villa can be better, and I hope that's the case. But at the moment, not quite there, but not reason for me to panic just yet. Rob, I enjoyed that chat. Thank you very much for joining me. Hopefully people watching along live enjoyed it too. Thanks to those who got involved in the comments. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, there are comment sections or review sections you can get involved with as well. They're very handy to us. If you want something a little bit more cheery, not that button. This one, the Villa Social Christmas special came out on Sunday. That was our previous video on YouTube. I've had 10,000 views on it so far and lots of positive feedback and comments. If you've not had time to watch that yet, you can do so whenever you like. Our next episode will be the Brighton post-match on Monday evening, so a bit of time before our next upload. That'll probably be me and Matt Kendrick. I'm trying to get through this without doing a gassy Peroni burp, so excuse me for that. Thanks everyone for watching or listening. Thank you, Rob, for joining me, and we'll see you Monday. Bye-bye.